What's up everyone, and welcome to another episode of Let's Max Warframe, where we're going to be going and taking a look at the brand spanking new event weapon as part of Operation Buried Debt, and that is the upgraded BFG, the Opticor Vandal. The Opticor has been a fan favourite weapon for as long as I can remember, and a Vandal version has always been something that people have been wanting, and it is finally here. So what's it like now it is actually finally here? Well, it comes with a base damage of 400, which is actually 600 less than the standard version. It comes with mostly puncture damage, bit of slash, and a bit, well, even less impact really. Not really enough even to mention. However, because it does have that lower base damage, it does have these supporting stats that sort of are up to bit to try and sort of change its role a little bit. We've got a charge rate of 0.6, which is extremely quick compared to the standard weapon. Critical chance goes up to 24%, critical multiplier up to 2.6, the magazine goes up to 8, and the reload speed goes down to 1.4. The status even goes up to 30%. So that basically turns this thing from a big one-shot, almost like a sniper type railgun thing, into being able to deal with groups of enemies a lot easier. And that really is going to be the focus of the weapon, personally, when I go about modding this thing. So that brings me really nicely onto actually modding the Opticor Vandal. We have 3 former on here, although realistically you could probably do with a 4th just to help fit another build. But 3 is what I've got here for this build. Serration for damage, split chamber for multi-shot. We've got Point Strike for crit chance, Vital Sense for crit damage, Amalgam Scope because the head hitboxes seem to be very, very, very lenient when it comes to the Opticor and the Vandal, so having this up all the time is very, very easy. Vigilante Armaments for more multi-shot, as well as the chance to enhance your crit from an orange to, well, it's going to be from a yellow to an orange crit, which is quite a big difference because you get the extra crit multiplier from that. And then we got High Voltage and Malignant Force to give us really good status, as well as corrosive damage. Now what this means is that against heavily armoured targets, you are going to proc corrosive fairly often, but it also means that you're actually going to do more damage on every hit because of the corrosive. There you go, as you can see on the top, we've got our Amalgam Scope procced pretty reliably. We're never going to let that drop. These guys are easier to hit headshots on anyway because it's a very exposed head. But as you can see, we're actually doing more and more damage on every time we proc corrosive. Obviously, we're going to do more damage each time, which actually makes this a lot more effective than it actually appears at first glance, because obviously you look at the fact that it's got a ton less base damage, and you immediately sort of expect that this thing is going to, well, that this thing is going to suck, but it just doesn't. So as you can see, we're just going to tear through a couple of these again. You can see it's very, very effective. We've got bleed procs going on as well, because it does have slash, so it can proc it. I'm not running hunter munitions. I didn't find it to be efficient enough or reliable enough, so, but it is an option if you do want to go down that route. You could also go bladed rounds if you wanted to, instead of Amalgam Scope. I don't necessarily recommend that at a higher level, because you've got to actually make sure you kill something to get it procced. But it is an option if you want to. Or, what you could do, is you could replace Amalgam Scope on our second build with Heavy Caliber. Now, this actually sounds like, you know, one of those things, oh, Heavy Caliber, no one uses Heavy Caliber. However, let's change this around for now. This actually is a lot more effective than it seems. So let's fill these in again. This is actually very, very effective because it hits like a truck now. It does still have the same proccing power as before, but it just doesn't have the same reliability of crits. So it is a possibility, and if you're not, you know, confident on hitting your headshots that often, then this is actually something you could go for. You're going to get more damage out of your slash procs more often than not. So yeah, you can see if we get the upgraded crit, it does definitely hit like a truck, but because of the fact that it doesn't have the same reliability of crits, it doesn't have quite the same damage output. There we go, and that one's down. However, where this does actually shine is when you actually take the high voltage off, and we put the thermite rounds in here, and we go with gas damage, and we go against the corpus. This thing absolutely shreds the corpus for this build. Oh boy, it absolutely shreds them. Now you don't necessarily have to use heavy caliber here. You can actually use the Bane of Corpus mod, because that gives you the scaling effect on the gas procs. But as you can see, that's we're getting very unlucky with the procs there. That's a bunch of dead techs. They died very, very quickly, and that shows just how effective this build can be. The regular crits plus the massive base damage means that the gas procs this thing actually throws out are huge, and can just deal with like groups of corpus so easily. Absolutely brilliant weapon. That shield drone was being a right royal pain in the backside. But as you can see, absolutely shreds them. And if you wanted to, you could switch out that heavy caliber with the Prime Bane of Corpus. On this first build though, if you wanted to, I mean you could do it on the second build, but you do need to reformer. You could, if you wanted to, I can't find it there, Amalgam Serration. So what this does is it drops 10% of your base damage. So basically Serration is 155%, Amalgam is only 145%, and you will gain an extra 20% movement speed, which as you can see is actually pretty sizable. But realistically, it doesn't actually really hit your damage that much. And because most of the game you're going to be like overkilling most things, I actually think that this is a really solid idea. I really like the extra, like the additional movement speed on my frame for the loss of a little bit of the damage, which is overkill anyway. So I would actually definitely recommend, if you've got this, you've got the Amalgam Serration anyway, I would 100% recommend going for Amalgam Serration instead of the standard Serration on here. I think it is actually a very, very good mod, and definitely what I would recommend using. This build is probably my preferred build. You can pretty much, like I say, this slot is one that has a whole bunch of different options, as I talked about earlier, but this is the build that I decided to go for, and I basically found to be the most reliable. So when all is said and done, what do I think of the Opticor Vandal? Well, you know what? I absolutely love this thing. It is so much fun. I like the original Opticor. I'm not a massive fan of it because personally I find it too slow and kind of unwieldy in a lot of situations. And that really sort of impacts my enjoyment of the weapon. The Vandal, however, fixes a lot of those problems. The charge speed is better, the reload is better, the better magazine. It all feels so much nicer. It feels better to use. Feels good in all situations. I know looking at it on the surface of things, 600 less base damage is a lot. But you've got to look further than that. It's not as simple as going, well, it's lost 600 base damage, therefore it's a lot worse. It's not. It doesn't even necessarily fill a different role, it just does it slightly differently. Whereas the normal Opticor will do very hard, very direct hits with a lot of damage, the Opticor Vandal does it more often, and because you're doing things like proccing corrosive or whatever, then you're actually increasing your damage on every hit anyway, plus you're firing much faster, you're firing just more regularly. I think that this is an absolutely brilliant weapon, and like I say, it is just so much nicer to use. The thing about the original Opticor is, for the majority of the game, the single target damage is way too much anyway. And I know that sounds kind of weird, coming from someone that maxes out every single weapon, but that single target damage was far too much, and often at lower levels, it's just completely wasted. If you can one-shot a level 90 with your Opticor, then it's completely wasted. One-shotting a level 30 isn't going to make any difference. However, the Opticor Vandal will still one-shot up to a pretty reasonable level. However, it will, like I say, fire faster. It will fire more often. At lower level, and one-shot them too, which actually makes it a far more efficient weapon at lower level than it is, than the standard Opticor is. And at higher level, I honestly, this scales better than the standard Opticor because it actually will proc status as well. Combine this with gas procs, combine this with corrosive and being able to proc that regularly. This thing actually increases its damage on every single shot because of the corrosive procs. It is absolutely fantastic and very, very effective. The actual operation itself was not... It wasn't bad. It was quite grindy, but it honestly was only a couple of hours work to actually get it done, which in my books actually isn't too bad. I will have a video on that coming very, very soon, and sort of some tips and tricks of how to get it done. It's fairly self-explanatory, fairly simple, but I will have that video out for you soon. But I do actually think that this is a very worthwhile reward at the end of it. So I hope you've enjoyed my look at the Opticor Vandal. I will have those other videos coming for you soon, as well as some of the Barracuda stuff. But for now, many, many thanks for watching, and I shall catch you in the next one.